So my good friend Berto pointed out something really interesting to me. You can actually go to the listing for Breakneck Blitz and see all of the normal moves affected by the Normalium Z, but you can scroll down and find out that Struggle is one of the moves affected. However, it only has a base power of 1. So that made us think, is it possible to actually use Z Struggle? Will it automatically activate? Will it actually show you Struggle as a move? Well, for starters, that means you need to get a Pokemon using Struggle with a normal type move. So what I did was I went to Bulbapedia and I looked up the normal typing, which has all of the listing for the normal type moves. Then I just pressed the PP button. That way I could find the lowest PP normal type moves. And that left me with a Rayquaza that only knows extreme speed. So this seems like it should be a really easy way of testing it. It's only a 5 PP move, and then all you have to do is slap on Normalium Z, use it 5 times, and then we'll see what happens with the Struggle. So I'm going to give my Rayquaza, or any Pokemon that could learn extreme speed in Normalium Z, and I'll be right back to show you guys the results. Okay, now things are about to get interesting because there's a lot of potential implications with the Z Struggle. So what I did was I found a Ghost-type Pokemon. That way I use extreme speed, it misses, and then we can run out of PP really quickly. So that's actually depressing and underwhelming. The battle ends just like that, so there's no option. The way that it makes it seem that with the Breakneck Blitz being there and existing for Struggle, it makes it seem like that when you click attack, there'll be an option to click the Z move for Struggle or just click Struggle. So this is actually also has its own implications that are pretty ridiculous. It means that Struggle cannot be in a moveset. You just can't click on and target the Struggle as you need to, and it doesn't interact with anything else as well. So yeah, there's just nothing that can happen. I was actually wondering if the Z Breakneck Blitz takes the aspect of a Struggle and can hit a Ghost-type Pokemon, or if it's just the same thing as a normal-type move, how the recoil works with that. So it's actually really strange how this ends up breaking down, but if you guys just came here for that information, you can click off the video now. I want to go a little deeper, just see how Struggle interacts and what's going on with the Z moves in general. So now we're on the Bulbapedia page for Struggle, and we can see that this move has been kind of complicated throughout the years as well. So Struggle has an accuracy of 100% in the first generation, but it also counts as a normal type move in all aspects. That rock type Pokemon resist it, and then ghost type Pokemon are immune, and you only take recoil equal to half the damage that you've dealt instead of a quarter of your total hit points. Now this was used to help out with stalling because it's kind of a low base power move, and Struggle means you shouldn't just be able to sit there and fight while struggling for a very long amount of time. That the move also only has 1 PP, but it never ticks down, so it's just 1 and then it stays at 1. However, in the first generation it was 10, but PP was never deducted from it. So really, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Either way, you can just infinitely use Struggle until the Pokemon eventually goes down because of the recoil. In second generation, it actually made it to where now it's unaffected by types, but it is listed as a normal typing, which is why we can see the Breakneck Blitz. That technically Struggle is a normal type move that deals damage, therefore there needs to be a Z interaction potentially, or maybe it's because of hacking, that if someone just hacks in Struggle as a move, they don't want the game to completely break when there's an invalid slot for a Z move when you're actually using a Z something and then there's no data for it. So that just might be there to prevent a game crash if anything, and then looking at it, there's also a lot of other changes. Struggle can no longer be copied by a mirror move, then bypasses accuracy check to always hit. So that pretty much makes it if you're choiced into a move and then you get taunt, disabled, or imprisoned and you're not allowed to use that move, forces you into the Struggle. But I know that there's some people out there that are saying, what about Sketch? That it shouldn't be too hard to just have Smeargle use Struggle against you and then also be able to sketch it with another Smeargle, or sketch into sketch and whatever. Well, actually, Sketch was released with all of this in mind. Sketch cannot be used to copy Self-Destruct, Explosion, Struggle, Metronome, or Sketch itself. Can be used to copy Transform only if the move fails to activate due to the effects of a substitute. So kind of complicated on the interactions with Sketch and Struggle or anything like that. Also, I was going to see if you could like Z Struggle off of a status move. So what happens if you use Sketch, it fails for some reason? Because my thought is, all we have to do is make a Smeargle fail Sketch, which isn't really too hard at all. Let's just use a Super Potion on our Rayquaza. That means we're not using a move. Smeargle, a wild Smeargle like this, will only have Sketch, and it can only have Sketch. So that fails, and that means that Smeargle, the only thing that it can do is Struggle right now. So we can either catch the Smeargle right here, and then instantly test if you could Z Struggle off of a status move. which could be an interesting kind of interaction, or we could also just bring in our own Smeargle to sketch that struggle, which isn't even possible because of game mechanics. So just want to show you guys that there is things we could do with this, but unfortunately it just doesn't matter at all, and that's kind of it. So maybe you learned something, maybe you found out about a weird interaction, and let's just pretend for a moment that you could actually use Z-Struggle for a 1 base power move. Well, the results are going to be very underwhelming. Now, at first I was wondering if it worked in the damage formula to only output 1 damage, but that's actually not the case. So you could actually do anywhere from like 1 to 5 damage, or depending on the Pokemon, you might get a little bit of extra damage. Also, I guess a normal type Pokemon will get Stab on top of it, and this actually reminded me of Return. So effectively, it would turn into a worst friendship, you know, like the lowest friendship value Return whenever you use your Z move, and I'm guessing the only implication for this, the only way this could be usable, if the opponent is also struggling and you need them to take recoil, or if you just need to not die from a struggle for 1 turn as they're taking some form of recoil. Maybe they have Focus Sash. I don't know. There's a very limited use case for this, but it still would be very interesting if you could hit the Z move, hit the struggle, win a game off of that through sheer shenanigans, but it looks like Game Freak made that not possible. And then to end this video, let's talk about the base power conversion for Z moves, because it's really interesting. Struggle, it has a base power of 50, so by using this conversion table, you would expect that it has a Z move power of 100. And that's why it caught my eye, that it only had a base power of 1. As you can see right here, Struggle has a power of 1 as a Z move in the game data. It does not follow this table, but is not possible to turn Struggle into a Z move, and man, I really wish I read this page before making all of this for the video. However, I think this still works as a good video idea because I was talking to my friends. We didn't know what would happen and what the interactions are if you try to go for a Z struggle, so at least getting that hands-on application, having it in video form, and if you haven't read every single sentence on the Z move page, then you might not know. So I'm guessing that a majority of Pokemon players do not know about the Z struggle interaction, therefore this video should still have value. But also, this is where things do get weird, because you might notice that there's a 0 base power, but that still converts to a 100 Z move power. How is there a 0 base power move that isn't a status move? Well, there's actually quite a few of them. Mirror Coat, for example, has a 0 base power. That's because its damage is affected by the amount of damage that it receives. It's the same for anything that counters Metal Burst, anything that returns damage in some form, and even Final Gambit is classified as a special move. Now, this has a lot of implications. One, it means that you're actually going to be able to use it for a Z move, and it loses its negative priority. So if you have a Pokemon using Z Mirror Coat turning into Shattered Psyche, it's going to become a 100 base power move, not lose the priority, and then have that coverage involved for it. Another implication is that as a damage dealing move, moves like the Mirror Coat, moves like Final Gambit and Counter, they will not affect other typings. So Mirror Coat does not affect Dark-type Pokemon, Counter and Final Gambit do not affect Ghost-type Pokemon. And it's kind of awkward because it doesn't have any base power, but if it was a status move doesn't care about type immunities, so that kind of adds an extra layer to this, and even then, we can still relate this to struggle, because if the Pokemon using Mirror Coat is hit by a special move that deals 0 damage, Mirror Coat becomes a special move with 1 base power. So there's that 1 base power again. So even outside of Z moves, there's still a lot of programming quirks that kind of protect the game from having weird things happen, and then it just kind of spills over into 1 base power. That way it at least does something, even though it's not supposed to do anything because of some strangeness going on. Final Gambit is also a strange-ish kind of exception. I didn't notice this on the Bulbapedia page, so I don't know which one is more correct, but on Cerebi, at least it lists Final Gambit as a Z move with 180 base power, even though it only has a base power of 1, or the unapplicable base power. It's just dealing damage based on your amount of hit points and not any kind of power formula, so that becomes a 180 base power move instead of something like the Mirror Coat. 1 on the base power, but it becomes a Z move power of 100. So I don't know how the table applies, or I don't know if there's any other exceptions other than the ones listed right here. And I also want to look at this from a damage calculation view as well, because there are instances where you can use the Z Shattered Psyche or use one of these moves with a Z move and still find more damage. And we saw this on Fan Fridays. We saw a Superior that instead of using Leaf Storm actually had the Shattered Psyche for the Z move, and there's a lot of cases that it can work in. So Toxapex is a very interesting example. It's a poison type Pokemon, but it's also water, therefore it's hit neutral by grass. So the super effective Psychic is slightly more damage than the neutral Leaf Storm. So against fighting type Pokemon, this is also going to be the same kind of effect, but you want to save it for Pokemon that are pure poison, for something that brings a heavy resist, or even something like the Venusaur or the Amoonguss, that these are some of the biggest problem Pokemon when you're running the Superior. So if you actually think outside the box, yeah, what happens if you're already at +2, +4 from using the Leaf Storm on the Superior? Or you do Leaf Storm, get a little bit of chip damage, and then Psychic comes in at +2, +4, whatever, and now you're able to KO these Pokemon that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise KO. And it doesn't really make that much of a difference as long as you're hitting those super effective moves. The Leaf Storm at 130 base power gets stabbed, comes 195. Super effective Shattered Psyche actually bumps up to 200. So it's weird how it's like a modified Psychic. Also, there was no Mirror Coat on the listing, so I wasn't able to put Mirror Coat or anything like that. So I just put in Psychic, bumped it up to 100 base power. That's why it looks a little weird if you're wondering why the damage calculation looks that way. But that's kind of the idea. That's slightly stronger than a Psychic, no stab, but at least it's a different coverage option, that now you have this move that isn't a part of your move pool, but gets added by the Z move. Final Gambit becomes a 180 base power special move. That's a little ridiculous, but unfortunately when you look at the list of Pokemon that learn Final Gambit, it's not special fighting type Pokemon except for maybe the Lucario. Now Lucario is also interesting because it gains a lot of speed off its Mega Evolution, but you can't Mega Evolve and also have a Z move, so it could work or it couldn't work, but yeah, it puts you in a really interesting position where you can use, you know, just Final Gambit, Z move, special, stab, insane amounts of damage, and then also do the real Final Gambit, and maybe even 2 for 1. So that seems like a possibility that you could do. However, when you look at Focus Blast becomes a 190 base power move, but then it just reverts back to Focus Blast, which has a 70% accuracy. So Z moves have a lot of these weird interactions that they completely change the move. That when you look at Mirror Coat, it doesn't have any minus priority. It doesn't have anything to do with the opponent hitting you. That Z moves just become a different move that can't miss and have a lot of crazy interactions outside of that. And maybe that's the best takeaway from this video, because there's a lot of things. I want to do a video just on these weird interactions like Mirror Coat and the modification stats, but that doesn't seem like it's worthy of just a video. Same with Struggle, that we found out Struggle is kind of lame, but we looked deeper into it, and now we just have a better understanding of Z moves and trivia overall. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.